Welcome, everyone, to the Captive Audience. It is the 11th of October, Monday. Glad to see you. Glad to be here. And I'm Kevin Hoare. Actually, I will fix that. It currently says I'm Don Anderson. And there is, as we know, only one Don Anderson. No, I'll go ahead and update that. And I wanted to share with you, I think, what the biggest story of the day is, even though there's always so many. This is the biggest story of the day because it doesn't just refer to one place, but refers to the entire nation. Today, President Trump gave a news conference, which they gave plenty of hints where it was coming, that he would bring the DC police under federal control and deploy the National Guard. He said, "I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime." Now, as you might have seen, there was a young man from the Doge team who was assaulted and beaten severely in DC. DC's had constant problems. It's had FBI agents and even, I think, a member of Congress had their car stolen or hijacked. There have been shootings. There was a young man who was shot to death, a congressional aide or intern that was shot, and there's been constant problems with Washington D.C. and the mayor Muriel Bowser has done nothing about it. She's one of these woke idiot mayors who, frankly, thinks that it's her province to go ahead and let crime overrun the nation's capital. Except this is a great example of why Washington, D.C. must not become a state. It must remain a place that the federal government can function. And that is its primary role, and not to be under the thumb of any particular state or to have people representing it in Congress while it itself is the location of Congress. So this is what Muriel Bowser said in response to Trump. She goes, "While this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past that we're totally surprised." Well, this isn't rhetoric. This is real. And Muriel Bowser has in no way taken it seriously. What's unsettling and unprecedented is how much of a disaster of a mayor she has been for a city that has probably more police forces operating in it than anything else. But you're right, Lori, because the reason why I think this is actually a super big story, one that we all should take the time to pay attention to, is this isn't the only thing that they're doing. This isn't just about restoring order in the nation's capital. President Trump is doing it there because he can. In fact, just to make sure everyone understands, he invokes Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. I believe it's an act from like 1973 that allows him to place the DC Metropolitan Police under direct federal control. And Attorney General Pam Bondi will assume control of the police department as, in effect, the police commissioner. Which is great because I don't think any of those cops like working for Muriel Bowser the way things have been going. This is what President Trump said, by the way, to add to that. Because I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, and some of the places you hear about as being the worst places on earth. Much higher. He went on to list the major criminal incidents in the city, including the recent assault on the Doge staffer Edward Big Balls Corristine. That gentleman. the carjacking of Representative Henry Cuellar, a Democrat from Texas, in the Navy Yard neighborhood. So I was remembering that correctly. He also referenced the recent shooting of a congressional intern and an assault on one of Senator Rand Paul's Kentucky staffers, as well as the murder of a former Trump administration official. That was a while back. He pointed to the city's implementation of no cash bail, which actually the cashless bail thing swept across the country as became one of the worst ideas ever, as it did what we see here in Oregon, which is basically have people come in, they get charged, get sent back out immediately and released, and then they go and reoffend. It sends no deterrent message to them. And in Oregon, there's no appearance before a judge to determine if that particular person might pose a significant risk to the community if he's released or she's released from jail. And so Congress and the president do have the power to do this in in Washington, D.C. But this is a problem that exists in every other city. And so I think what the president's going to do is he's going to show the rest of the country how you can clean up and remedy a mess in a city, and show all the other cities how they should be considering running themselves. And I think people are just sick and tired of the garbage that they've been hearing over and over and over. We can't fix this. We can't do that. We have to. We need less police and more people walking around doing unarmed community policing. Well, that's just a great way to get shot. Yes, Jeanine Pirro, former judge and now District of Columbia, U.S. Attorney, Judge Jeanine Pirro, is going to sentence a whole bunch of people. She's going to not sentence, but charge and prosecute a whole bunch of people that are right now getting away with what they're doing in D.C., and that's over. It's time to show what our country can do if you actually enforce the law and have real police protection. Now, I know I saw a very good Epoch Times article. Let me see if I can find it, because it was about... Oh, yes, I want to go to the English site. It was about how he's going to use this order to clean up the homelessness problem in D.C. and get vagrants off of the streets. Let me see if I can find that, because I think it's an excellent, excellent point, which is that so many of the folks that we just allow to run rampant and overrun our cities, President Trump's going to do something about it. And here's what he said. And listen up, Portland. Yes, all the garbage in Portland and the attacks by ICE on those offices. I think those folks... Antifa is going to be learning some hard lessons soon. A lot of people are going to be going to jail, including the ones that are just coordinating and sponsoring and funding all of it. But we'll get to that here in a moment. Here's what he said. President Trump proposes sending homeless, quote, far from the Capitol, unquote, as part of a beautification push. On any given night, there are 3,782 single individual persons experiencing homelessness, which is that's the euphemism for, saying I want to sit and do drugs all the time and sleep on the streets. That's the experiencing homelessness. This isn't what they're experiencing: drug addiction, particularly fentanyl addiction. And many of them are not taking advantage of even emergency shelters or transitional housing, as this article mentions. So it's kind of written a little politically correct, at least for the Epoch Times. But he said that they want to move. He said the homeless have to move out immediately. We'll give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol. And that's legit. The Capitol is a place where you're supposed to be able to go and make your voice heard. not do fentanyl and poop on the streets and assault people and steal stuff. That's not it. And it was a city that has had problems with violent crime in the past, but 700,000 people, and and yet our government needs to function in such a way that you can walk outside and go from one part of the capital to the other, even just as a tourist, and not experience these problems. But it was a Doge staffer that was assaulted violently during a carjacking attempt. And he gave plenty of warning to Muriel Bowser saying, we'll do this. So he's following through. And this is the thing. People now know that if President Trump says, come on, get your act together, or I'm going to do something about it, and he has the power to do it, he does it. And Trump wrote also, by the way, on Truth Social, crime in Washington, D.C. is totally out of control. Local youths, gang members, some only 14, 15, 16-year-olds, are randomly attacking, mugging, maiming, and shooting innocent citizens. At the same time, knowing that they'll be almost immediately released. And by the way, a lot of these gangs use underage kids, underage teenagers, so under the age of 18, to commit these crimes because they know that they can kind of get away with it. Well, President Trump said if DC doesn't get its act together quickly, we'll have no choice but to take federal control of the city and run this city how it should be run and put criminals on notice that they're not going to get away with it anymore. Just imagine if we had mayors that said that in so many of our cities. Now, Muriel Bowser, the Washington, D.C. mayor, said the Capitol was, quote, not experiencing a crime spike, unquote. It is true that we had a terrible spike in crime in 2023, but it is not 2023. We have spent over the last 2 years driving violent crime down in this city, driving it down to a 30-year low. We'll tell that to the people who've been assaulted and been carjacked. It's done. They're done with it. Now we're going to find out just how low crime really should be if you enforce it. Now, when they talk about how much crime has been reduced, they are always lauding the percentages that they reduced it by from its super high peak, which means that it's still pretty darn high. And it says here, violent crime in the first 7 months of 2025 dropped by 26% compared to 2024. Overall crime in Washington was down by roughly 7%. However, that's from the 2023 high that it's been dropping from. And so it is time. We're going to find out what can be done about homelessness, which is drug addicted urban camping mixed with crime. We're going to find out what can be done about the murders and the carjackings. We're going to find out. And then we're going to go and hold every other mayor in the country accountable for this. And we should. So thank you, President Trump. Thank you for making Washington, D.C. great again. And frankly, showing national leadership on an issue that has so many people frustrated and angry with their current leadership. By the way, if you want to watch the press conference, I think it's in its entirety. I'm posting that link right here. There it is. It's, I think, an hour and 17 minutes. But I also posted a shorter version that's less than 20 minutes that you can watch just of the announcement. And then there was some of the follow-on stuff that took place. So this is the big news of the day. I know we started a little bit late here today, and I apologize for that. Had to kind of get the technical doodads working properly, and I did. But now I've talked about a very important story, and I hope that you get a chance to tell others about it. Let's move on to some other national news. Now, in conjunction with this announcement, Nancy Pelosi, who increasingly sounds like she's completely off her rocker, to be honest. I think we're only a matter of weeks away from people telling Nancy Pelosi on the Democrat side of the aisle to maybe just shut up. But she got blasted by the former Capitol Police chief because Pelosi compared Trump's activation of the National Guard to secure DC to January 6th, which is ironic because Nancy Pelosi famously prevented the National Guard from being deployed and did not take President Trump's offer of mobilizing and deploying the National Guard before January 6th. Seriously, she said that she and her people admitted that she screwed up. She admitted on a video done by HBO that she probably screwed up, and they thought it was bad optics. But then they left the Capitol wide open to a very small number of rioters, as we know. And this is really amazing that Nancy Pelosi even thought she was the right person to talk about this at all. This is not the January 6th riot. This is the crime in DC, and the president's taking action to protect our capital city, the District of Columbia, from it. Pelosi, I guess she should keep talking because everything she says is great to hang around the necks of Democrats. And then she claimed, and this is even more amazing, that he's activating the DC Guard to distract from, quote, his incompetent mishandling of tariffs, healthcare, education, and immigration, to name a few blunders. Those are all the opposite of what she says. They're not only not blunders, but the tariffs are working brilliantly, in part to bring in money to the federal government without triggering inflation, but at the same time being used as a tool to compel free trade and lower tariff barriers with nations all over the world. There are so many trade deals that have come forward now. And frankly, the country of China is finding themselves more and more isolated as this goes on. So these talking points are lame, Nancy. You're not only off your game, but your entire party is talking about this, and they're off their game too. Now, healthcare, no idea what she's talking about. We're dealing with the healthcare system that the Democrats left us under Biden. And there's a lot more work to do to make that system work better. And I know that Make America Healthy Again and RFK Jr. are on top of it. They're going to stop mandating treatments, I'll just say, and I think you know which treatments I'm talking about, that do not have enough testing behind them. And they're going to go and start looking at things that are actually chronically leaving people unhealthy in this country, particularly young people, and the obesity epidemic that's happening there. Education is getting better because we're not going to spend as much money giving it to the Department of Education, which educates no one, and more time block granting it to the states. And then, of course, those states are going to have to be held accountable because they will be entirely in charge of making sure that they produce results. Something that we know in Oregon they are not doing. They're near the bottom, and they refuse to admit it, and they keep saying they need more money, more time, and bigger contracts for teachers, and they keep delivering worse and worse results. And of course, they say they need more taxes. Immigration, really? You're going to go there, Nancy? I mean, seriously, the border is literally totally secure now. Totally secure. Nancy thinks that's bad. You know what? Keep talking, Nancy, and keep making these comparisons because this is what the let me see, what is his name here? This is I think it's the guy that's the head of the National Guard. Let me just see if I can suss out his name from the list of things here. He said, ma'am, it is long past time to be honest with the American people Um, his name is Sund, who's the chief of the Capitol Police during January 6th. He said, "Ma'am, it's long time past time to be honest with the American people. On January 3rd, I requested National Guard assistance, but your sergeant at arms denied it. Under federal law 2 USC 1970, I was prohibited from calling them in without specific approval. That same day, Carol Corbin of the Pentagon offered National Guard support, but I was forced to decline because I lacked the legal authority. On January 6th, while the Capitol was under attack, and despite my repeated calls, your sergeant at arms again denied my urgent request for over 70 agonizing minutes, running it up the chain for your approval. When I needed your assistance, it was denied. Yet when it suited you, you ordered fencing topped with concertina wire and surrounded the Capitol with thousands of armed National Guard troops." So Nancy Pelosi got around to it later when for the cameras, they needed to make it look like it was a wartime footing. But she did nothing when she had plenty of warning in advance. Of course, Pelosi has not responded to this criticism from the chief of the Capitol Police. It is time Nancy Pelosi's held accountable for this. But in the meantime, she can keep uttering her lame talking points because they suck. Man, do they suck. Here's another piece of national news, which I think is fantastic, and I hope to hear more about this. A career intelligence officer who worked for Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee for more than a decade repeatedly warned the FBI beginning in 2017 that then Representative Adam Schiff had approved leaking classified information to smear then President Donald Trump over the now debunked Russiagate scandal, according to bombshell FBI memos that Kash Patel, the FBI director, has turned over to Congress. All these memos are starting to come out. The person who was essentially the whistleblower on this is coming forward now. And they have all these reports. In this case, a Democrat by party affiliation who described himself as a friend to both Schiff, now a California senator, and former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, considered the classified leak to be unethical, illegal, and treasonous, but was told not to worry because Schiff believed he would be spared prosecution under the Constitution's speech and debate clause. Well, I guess we're going to test that speech and debate clause as he leaked classified information. No publicly disclosed opinion from the Attorney General or Solicitor General can be found making that determination as a matter of law. So nobody has determined that the speech and debate clause applies here. So this is just a belief that Schiff has in his head. The whistleblower is still protected, which is fortunate, but he personally attended a meeting at which Schiff authorized leaking classified information. When working in this capacity, the whistleblower was called to an all-staff meeting by Schiff. In the meeting, Schiff stated the group would leak classified information which is derogatory to the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Schiff stated the information would be used to indict President Trump. The whistleblower told investigators that he stated this would be illegal, and upon hearing his concerns, unnamed members of the meeting reassured that they would not be caught leaking classified information. So there are people who stood up and said they weren't going to do it and refused to do it. Schiff has not responded to comments. Now, Schiff's also facing an investigation right now about mortgage fraud, as is Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York. This is really fantastic because these guys are going to, I think, get their comeuppance. And they should, because they broke the law to weaponize the justice system and to leak classified information, which in fact didn't result in what they said and did violate federal law. As we know, and as Joe Biden should know from his time as a U.S. Senator, that in Congress you don't have the right or the ability to declassify information or leak it legally. And so I think this is we're going to see what happens with this. By the way, I don't know if I heard this correctly, but Robert Mueller, as I understand it, is in a memory care facility. At least I think I remember hearing that the other day. I don't know if I'm right about that, but the guy who conducted the Russia collusion probe um, and gave a report in March of 2019, and in fact did not establish any criminal collusion between Trump and Russia. It was further vindicated when the Inspector General showed that Devin Nunes was right, Schiff was wrong about the entire affair, and it uncovered the FBI's Crossfire Hurricane investigation and did a report on it, all these errors and omissions. But now, here we are years later, and then of course we had the Durham report. This has been thoroughly debunked, and these people have been exposed. Now, interestingly enough, President Joe Biden, on his last full day in office this year, pardoned Schiff because apparently he thought Schiff needed to be pardoned. And Schiff was actually formally censured in 2023 by the House of Representatives because he spread false accusations and perpetuated false accusations from the Steele dossier. But yeah, Joe Biden pardoned Schiff on his last day in office, but only in reference to Schiff's role on the select committee for the January 6th Capitol riot, which, as we know, there was misconduct with that, including destruction of evidence. And Biden tried to whitewash that. So apparently, and then Schiff claims that he wished Biden hadn't pardoned him. I think he's going to start wishing that the president had issued much broader pardons for him, because this California senator's, I think, going to go down. And it couldn't happen to a bigger piece of Schiff. Anyway, yes, I think a lot of people did hear that news. By the way, did I post the link to the Nancy Pelosi thing? Here, let me post that so you guys can go take a look at that. And then this is the Schiff report that I just referred to. So I think there's been some pretty awesome news out of DC today. If we can show that a city that's beset by violent crime, drug addicted, urban camping, homelessness can be remedied in short order and order restored within a reasonable amount of time, it's going to put a lot of pressure on all these other cities. And I think it should. It should. Here's a couple of other interesting pieces of news. So Trump has nominated an economist from the Heritage Foundation, E.J. Antony, to lead the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, when that first came out, that he had fired the Biden-era Bureau of Labor Statistics after the last employment report, everybody slammed Trump and said that Trump had made claims that there were errors and that it was that this person was biased. Well, it almost doesn't matter if they are biased or not. They were incompetent. Now, there's intentional incompetence, and then there's just incompetence. But the person who was holding that position, Erica Metarfer, she had to steeply revise the May and June reports downwards in addition to the lackluster July report. Well, here's the thing. A lot of people make decisions based on that data. One of them is the Federal Reserve. But of course, everybody out there investing and anticipating what's going to happen with the markets. Well, this isn't the first time this has happened. And they grossly overestimated job growth during the Biden administration. The same person was coming in and not only starting to revise downward all these figures, but the amount that they were being revised by was like in the million plus range. So this is not something that just happens by accident. Somebody is a complete fool or they're biased. Now he's getting a pretty competent person to come in and replace that. And President Trump mentions here, and I've listened to a good analysis of this in a podcast, that this woman overstated job growth under the last president and really he subscribes to the notion here that it was to aid Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. And so, but now he's questioning whether the economy is actually doing as badly as these revisions claim. In the end, what you want is accurate data in a timely manner to build trust. And that was what the new commissioner promises to do. Is there a test for competency? Well, there should be oversight, because I can tell you, you can also game the market if you can mess with this data. It's just as bad as like betting on sports teams and having somebody on the team paid off, or throwing the game in order to help a bunch of people win money. It can be that bad. And I'm not saying that happened here, but that's why it needs tremendous oversight, because you really can't have that. So that's a very interesting piece of news to share. And then this one, I noticed that there's several media figures. I'm trying to remember the name of the one that got fired at ABC, who recently came out and admitted that that they're biased in the ABC newsroom. I'm forgetting his name right now. Maybe you guys can recall. But former NBC News Meet the Press host Chuck Todd said that no one but President Trump has had this much impact on the country since FDR. I would add one caveat that President Reagan was pretty impactful, but that was over 8 years. President Trump has done it in 200 days. And he actually made this comparison between Trump and FDR on the Christian Broadcasting Network interview that he did in an exchange with journalist David Brody. So I don't know. Some of these people, Chuck Todd, and I'm forgetting the name of the other guy, but they're starting to realize that, yeah, they're biased, and they have reported inaccurate information in the news. And now they're finally acknowledging the scope and the impact of President Trump. And by the way, President Trump just doing what he said he was going to do. I think I saw there was an interview with Frank Luntz, who is a pollster, who said, if you're a Trump supporter, you're getting exactly what you voted for from President Trump. And I think that's actually also very true, which, just think, you vote for somebody and then they do what they say they're going to do, and they do it in record time. This is a standard that's going to be hard to meet, but it is the standard we should have. This is what the standard should be. And, we got tired of being told by the Biden administration that things weren't as bad as they were when they were, and far worse. And then being told that they weren't trying to do the things that they, in fact, were trying to do. And then when things go terribly wrong, like in Afghanistan and the pullout, we get told that it's a great success. Everybody's done with that. And the media that played along with this, plus the media that frankly covered up for Biden's mental decline, they have a price to continue paying. And I don't think they can win back that credibility anytime soon. Really. It's just really hard to see how that's even possible. But they're going to continue lurking. They're going to continue spewing false information. It's just like we keep hearing, oh, yeah, Medicare is going to be cut. President Trump is going to cut Medicare. No, Medicaid, which is a different program, they are kicking off Medicaid, the people who are able-bodied and can work, who shouldn't be getting Medicaid. And they're going to get illegal immigrants who shouldn't be collecting Medicaid off of those programs. You'll notice that when Democrats say that they're cutting Medicaid for people who need it, they mean the people who can work, who are citizens, and the people who are here illegally, who cannot legally, should not legally obtain any of that money. They just say they're people or residents. That's what they do. So you have to listen closely to their lies, because they claim and they try to frighten people who are actually receiving these benefits in a legitimate way. And I do think that we are entering a new era here. That we're going to stop having people just tolerating people doing this kind of thing. By the way, our old friend Harmeet Dillon, who is the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, the one who sues to protect your First Amendment rights, your Second Amendment rights, stuff that was of little concern to the Biden administration, but Harmeet Dillon is out there doing it. She has warned that federal agents and intelligence officers who weaponize their government powers for political purposes could face criminal charges under civil rights laws that she is tasked with enforcing. And these civil rights laws are created to fight injustices during past eras like Jim Crow era. But there is a charge which is violation against rights. And I heard about it the other day, and I think we're going to see some people actually facing the charges on that, which would be great, because that'll send a message to everyone else who thought they could do this kind of stuff with impunity and weaponize the government and go along with it, just following orders, that when they do that, they will be held accountable. Now, maybe they'll roll over and turn in their superiors, but then their superiors are going to face accountability too. And it's high time. And by the way, we are seeing serious efforts to make sure that this information gets out there from the CIA Director John Radcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, the FBI Director Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, and of course now we just heard from Harmeet Dillon. By the way, Section 241, Title 18 of U.S. Code makes it, quote, unlawful for two or more persons to conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person of any state, territory, or district in the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him or her by the Constitution or the laws of the United States. There you go. Criminal. So I am really hoping that we see this. I think that this is how we can set a new standard. And look, I don't care which side of the political aisle someone's on. If you're doing that and they convict you in front of a jury and it's a legitimate charge, convict in front of a jury, it's time to face the music and have those people serve time. I don't care what. So this is just equal justice under the law. And so I'm really looking forward to this. I think it's very important for our nation that this happened. And some people say, well, we're going to have to wait. We can't, it's going to take a really long time. Nothing seems to be taking a really long time right now in the Trump administration. I do hope that they find enough evidence to overturn Biden's pardons and executive orders with regard to the auto pen. There's a really good show that Mark Levin did over the weekend on Fox. So I recommend that you go and take a look at it, because what he did is he laid out from the evidence in the Constitution and in the debates that took place about the Constitution, as well as debates about the 25th Amendment that took place in the United States Congress in the mid-60s. Which is the ability to remove a president when they're incapable of carrying out the duties of the presidency. All the context around that, the debates and why it took place, and whether a president, which the founders and the people who wrote the Constitution were concerned that that there could be fraud, that a president could simply have a letter sent on his behalf by someone to Congress just saying, yeah, I approve that law. No, it says he must affix his signature in his presence to the Constitution. Now, it did apparently in the debate say someone else could sign it with the president present, but you can't have these pieces of legislation or anything else where a signature is required, approved by a president, when it's not his signature and he's not present. So I guess we're going to see how this is tested in the courts. But I do think that we're going to see that Biden stupidly, really foolishly, unless he was just physically incapable of signing these documents, and there weren't that many, that he has foolishly destroyed much of his own legacy if this were to play out the way it seems like it'll play out. By the way, gotta love this. Um, you know, President Trump met with the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, and now they've reached a peace agreement. And they're actually going to have economic cooperation with the help of the United States to build a road that will circumvent some of the paths that right now you can only go through Russia to achieve. And I could see pipelines traveling that direction too. And these are countries that have had a lot of problems going back and forth. They settled it. You know, President Trump is producing a lot more peace than almost any recent president in memory. Obviously, they put a stop to the Pakistan-India war, two nuclear powers. There's the Thailand-Cambodia border war that started, also brought to a halt. And I think this is going to continue. I'm really anxious to see what he can do to use leverage, real leverage, to bring an end to the Ukraine war. I do think that doing it from a position of strength. Well, President Trump has actually started to assert that strength, the sort of Damocles of the sanctions, plus the fact that we're supplying weaponry to Ukraine, but the Europeans are paying for it in order to send it there because they just don't have the ability to do it themselves. That's how this should work. That way, the United States can just focus on being the arsenal of democracy for now and what we need to do to protect ourselves, our border, and frankly, in the Pacific, where the Europeans are even more useless when it comes to confronting China. That falls largely into our hands and our allies, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, and Australia in the Pacific Rim, along with some smaller island nations. So really, this is fantastic. I am very excited about the news we've seen today. And I do think that this is what it looks like when you know how to negotiate and how to wield influence. Just shifting gears here with the time just a few minutes we have left, there is some Oregon news. Senator Ron Wyden plans another U.S. Senate run, apparently. But Democrats are having a debate because Wyden, who's 79 years old, or will be 79 when he runs for another term in 2028, who doesn't look like this lively guy, apparently he's decided he's the indispensable man. And of course, as we know, Merkley's running again. Democrats passed a state law signed by the governor, which changes the law from the 90s that required a special election in order to replace a resigned U.S. senator. Well, these guys are almost certainly going to run again, use their name ID and incumbency, and then they're going to resign so that the governor can appoint somebody to complete the term through, I think, the next possible general election, which would be 2 years later, at which time that person serving would be the incumbent. This is a plan the Democrats have, and yet they seem to be unable to deal with the fact that they constantly have these geriatric, ancient people who don't have any of the energy and livelihood that you see President Trump have continue to linger on in the halls of Congress. And you know what? I say they should continue doing it because they look stupider and stupider. These people look weaker and weaker. And they frankly keep some of the younger communist-oriented Democrats like AOC out of these positions, at least for now. We'll see. Maybe actually one of them will come up like AOC might do to Chuck Schumer and challenge it. One of Tina Kotek's unprocessed offenders kidnaps an 11-year-old girl a convicted rapist named Elijah Arces is now facing charges for kidnapping an 11-year-old girl in Salem. He is classified as a, quote, unleveled sex offender in Oregon, meaning he has not undergone the necessary processing because the governor's too busy fighting against President Trump and raising your taxes to get the 18,000 individuals with sex crime convictions. So this is a convicted sex criminal that have not had the assessment done for their classification level, and in some cases has led to these people just being released. Kochek has not only ignored this 18,000 list, but she previously tried to pass bills that would delay the time to process sex offenders and also let more sex offenders go unprocessed by reducing the standards. Earlier this year, it was estimated that over 12,000 of these individuals were living and working today in Oregon, convicted sex offenders that have been released. This guy was released from prison in September 2004 as an unprocessed sex offender. He remained in this unprocessed status. His post-prison supervision concluded on January 1st, 2013. In 2012, he pled guilty to failing to report as a sex offender. So this guy already had a track record. And what did he do? Kidnapped an 11-year-old girl in Salem. That's what he's done now. So this is a person, Kotek, who's considered supposedly safe for re-election. I don't know how safe you're going to be when everybody gets to hear about this. And then there's some pretty interesting news to share with you about a ballot initiative that's been launched. This is the last story for the night. A new $10 park fee has joined the $20 paddleboard fee, and now people are starting to push back and are referring these to the ballot. It's a $20 fee charging people to be on public waterways for something they were able to do for free before, for which there was no need to go and start charging them, other than the government wanting to go and suck more money out of people. This fee was one of the only such fees in the United States for smaller than 10 feet floating vessels. So now there's a floating protest that's been going on called Let Us Paddle. PAC staged this floating protest this last weekend. And they are beginning to circulate the early stage of a petition that you need in order to go and start gathering signatures in earnest to get a ballot title. Starting October 1st, 21 state parks will begin charging for parking where it was previously free. So if you like to go to a state park and just park and go out and enjoy the state park, now they're going to charge you for parking, $10 for Oregon residents, $12 for out-of-state residents. Overnight camping rates will increase at 29 of the busiest parks starting next summer. Tent sites will increase to $29, and full hookup RV sites will increase to $52 on peak days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And by the way, these small boat fees for less than 1 day or 1 week are the only options. So they've decided to just go and suck money out of people for using our state parks in a way that there's no value added whatsoever by the government to this. They're just going and trying to suck money out of people. And you know who isn't paying any fee? Urban campers that are blighting our cities, doing fentanyl, leaving junk piles everywhere, trash, wrecked cars, and doing it on city streets for which there is no sanction or permission to go and occupy those spaces and blight those communities. They're not paying any fees. This is Oregon government. They charge law-abiding citizens for recreating when the government does nothing, adds no value. And at the same time, they don't do anything about the people that now we know in DC, President Trump is going to do something. So let's see what happens. We've got two very clear competing models. Let's help the people of Oregon choose between them by making sure that everyone knows what's being done. And again, thank you again for joining me here tonight on this episode of The Captive Audience. Tomorrow night, a special captive audience. My guest will be Jeff Reynolds, one of the co-founders of the Captive Audience, along with David Darnell and, of course, Sonny Danforth. But he's also a writer. He's written for PJ Media and various other publications along the way. He's going to tell us about a number of things, reflecting on what's happened with the Trump administration, what's happening in Oregon, which I know he still is aware of what's happening. And he will share with us the craziest climate change lunacy stories. He does that on a regular basis, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. Our good old friend, Jeff Reynolds, who's out in Florida, but keeps a keen eye on all of this for us. So join us tomorrow night on the next episode of The Captive Audience at 6 p.m. Have a great night, everybody, and please share this show with everyone you can. It's very important. Good night.